Hey guys, good afternoon. It's Brett here, directors. Thanks for joining today's live event, but focused on today closing costs. So I know everyone out there has heard of closing cost, but sometimes really understanding what are the different components of closing cost. You know, are they all fees? Are some of them tax insurance? All those particulars, and then when to pay those and how this works. So what I wanted to do today, guys, is kind of run through a standard closing cost and understand three basic categories. You have lender fees or origination fees, you have third party fees, and then you have prepaids such as taxes and insurance. So I'm going to screen share something for us to kind of chat through real quick and itemize each of these to get hopefully a really good understanding of where this is. So the first piece for us, guys, is closing costs are separate than the down payment. So I know one confusion out there sometimes is, hey, an FHA loan, for example, 3.5% down. Clients plan on, hey, what's 3.5% of the price? That's the cash they need. Well, unfortunately, you would need that down payment plus the closing costs. So I think it's important to plan for that. Now, there are credits and things we can discuss, but just number one, you have your down payment if you're doing a down and the closing cost to think about for a total cash position. So let's dive into this, guys. So the first section here you can see on this worksheet is called origination charges, or lender fees. So this is something more specific to the individual lender out there. So there could be multiple different fees in this, but some of the standard ones you'll see here is like an origination fee, processing fee, underwriting fee, and points, also sometimes called discount points. So as an example, for directors, we charge a 0% origination. Just our structure, we do zero. But you may find other lenders that are going to charge some type of an origination fee. Overall, it's still part of the lender fee. Then you'll see we have our standard processing and underwriting fees. Again, other companies may have different numbers there or call them other things, such as an admin fee or a funding fee, for example. Now, what you'll see that is going to be typically very consistent among lenders is this last item called points, sometimes referred to as discount points. Now, in this case, there's a number in this example here for us, but this is where things can range. So, for example, if you look at interest rates, like today, we have rates in the 8s down into the 5s. And some of that's going to be based on your individual credit score, type of loan, etc. But a lot of that depends on what points do we want to pay. So I often relate this to clients like a stock. Hey, this stock has this price. A different stock has a different price. Very similar in the secondary market with rates. An 8% rate has a certain cost or credit. That's going to be different than a 7% rate or a 6% rate. So when you look at this points item line here, guys, there's going to be a lot of flexibility for that to go up or down. If you want a higher rate, that's going to come in the secondary market with lower discount points or potentially no discount points. And vice versa. If you want to buy the rate down, it's going to bring that interest rate down, but have higher discount points. So I think with this section, it's important to understand what is the lender themselves charging as far as origination, processing, underwriting. And then for that discount point, that's a little more where you get to choose, hey, which option do I want? As far as, so hopefully they provide you, or you ask, for example, with us, multiple options to explore. This rate versus this rate versus this rate would have those different discount points. So you have some flexibility in there as to what fits the ultimate perfect budget for you. So that would be section one. Now, section two for us, third-party fees. So third-party fees are going to be the different groups that are associated with part of a real estate transaction. So for example, you have an appraisal. An appraisal is going to be the valuation of the property, but that's done by an appraiser, not by the lender themselves. Credit report. There's a third-party credit reporting agency. A title report. So there's title and escrow companies that are involved as third-party groups to do those. You'll see the recording fee. So that shows right now an estimate of King County, for example, but different counties will have a different fee they charge to record docs to public record. Tax service fee. So depending on the type of loan you're doing and the lender, there may be a little variance in the tax service fee. eDoc fee, that could be a third-party fee of generation of docs or other software. Then finally, you'll see a flood cert. And for example, like in our case, that's the requirement for us to check if a property is or is not in a flood zone. But kind of where these are categorized, guys, these are going to be not typically lender specific. For example, this is going to say, hey, almost any lender you go to is going to have some form of these fees because we're all required to have titles and to use an escrow company, to record the docs with the county, etc. So since they're not specific to a lender, you will see very, very small variance there. The variance will come into things: is this a purchase or a refinance? Are you buying at $1 million or 500,000? So there will be some up and down based on those parameters, but not necessarily specifically to the lender themselves. So that kind of gets you a good idea of, hey, these are those third-party fees associated with just buying a house in general. The other groups separate of a lender that are involved as part of the buying or refinance process. Now we get into the third bucket for us, prepaid items. Now, prepaid items are part of closing costs, meaning we would need to allocate these funds at closing. However, they're not fees necessarily. So for example, you'll see property taxes. In this example, almost $1,000 a month for this house. This is the client's property taxes. That's due to the county no matter what. But at closing, some of those may be paid up front or collected into an impound account. So this may be an upfront portion that's being paid, but again, it's not a fee. It's part of the taxes that would need to be paid regardless. Then you would see here an estimate of home insurance. Again, a client chooses their own home insurance, whether it's a purchase that's brand new or they are using their current, insurance company if it's a refinance. But again, depending on the time of loan closing and when their insurance renewal is, a portion of insurance may need to be collected at closing. But again, it's not an extra fee or something a lender is charging. It is just part of the insurance that is due at that time. The last piece, prepaid in this example. So prepaid interest is mortgages are always set with a mortgage payment on the 1st. Well, we don't always close a loan on the 30th or the 1st, for example. So sometimes we will close mid-month. So like in this case, showing 5 days of interest, this would assume closing on, say, the 25th or 26th of the month, 5 days before month end. So there's a little bit of collection. Once again, not necessarily a fee. It's just saying, hey, you, instead of having that first mortgage payment encompass 35 days, you're going to have a standard 30-day mortgage payment or 1 month, and a little bit's collected at closing. So I like to highlight this because unfortunately, sometimes as clients are comparing things out there, they would look at the bottom line total closing cost, which I think always is important. The problem is some lenders may not quote these accurately. So at the end of the day, if one person quoted tax insurance significantly lower, well, ultimately, when you go to closing, they will be identical amongst all lenders because it's based on the time of the year and the property. So I've had some clients unfortunately get a little bit misled there. So I think looking at this, guys, section 1 is going to be the biggest thing to look at from a true lender cost, maybe that comparison mindset. Sections 2 and 3, again, are going to be very much based on the third-party groups out there, which oftentimes are not fully selected by the lender. It may be dictated in that purchase and sale agreement. Then finally, that third section, prepaids, are going to be specific to your property, your insurance you choose, and the closing date. Nothing to do with the lender themselves. So hopefully that helps to get an idea of where those are. So now that we kind of got a basis of the differences in closing cost, I like to think about, okay, when we approach closing, the funds. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we would need to typically allocate these funds on top of our down payment. So it's something you want to plan for up front to make sure you feel comfortable with that total amount of cash needed. That being said, you can negotiate, and something we talk with our clients on constantly is, hey, depending on the market and type of offer we're making, could we get the seller to contribute towards these costs? Now, per guidelines, you can typically have the seller cover any of these 3 sections. So there are many cases where we help structure a loan where the seller covers these closing costs through negotiations, and therefore the client only comes in with their down payment. But that does need to be specifically negotiated. So hopefully that gives you some context. Now, separate of this, when you're buying a home, what else may be out there? Truly, there's going to be things like potentially an inspection. I always advise, I think an inspection is very wise when we're buying a home. It is just not required for most loan programs. So that's why you don't necessarily see that on an estimate, or for most lenders, you will not see that. Now, I think it's important to do one, so I think allocating some funds for an inspection could make sense. Separately of that, if you're buying a home, typically real estate fees are going to be covered through the seller. That being said, as we're talking to you here on August 20th, 2024, I know there's been some changes with, some of the NAR rulings out there. So we may see some change out there. So it's important to chat with your real estate agent to see, hey, would there be any type of cash needed for their commissions as well? So at the end of the day, guys, my biggest goal for clients is having a really good understanding. I think, unfortunately, so often clients don't get an opportunity to see the real detailed numbers until they've maybe already made a purchase or as far as in contract or kind of down the road. And it can catch them off guard, which is a bummer. So from our standpoint, we like going through all these numbers up front to have a crystal clear understanding of what's the cash, what type of offer should we structure? Do we want to ask for seller credit? Do we need to look at different kinds of points to make you feel comfortable? But that's the goal, is really understand these out of the gates. So we know as you approach closing, there's never going to be a surprise or catch you off guard. And you can structure the initial offer the proper way to meet what you guys need. So as always, any questions, guys, feel free to reach out. Always happy to, chat through DMs, talk on the phone, go through scenarios, but let us know how we can help. And thank you for taking some time today.